have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
I'm holding the Constitution, which I'm now covered by, partly.
Oh, we're past
I'm
that.
Andy Hum.
We're past that by the time they see this. I'm Ann Northrup. I'm still taken by our prescience in having that shot of the two women getting married in California as the end of our opening.
Yes.
It was legal 5 years ago, and it's legal again.
Yes.
Well, we have 2 weeks of news to catch up on with you, so we're going to talk at double speed, and you can slow it down to watch it. But the first thing I want to tell you is a big neon headline. James Essex, who loyal viewers of this show know very well, is a frequent guest, head of the LGBT Rights Project at the ACLU, and one of Edie Windsor's main lawyers will be here next week to give us the inside view of the case, the DOMA case at the Supreme Court, and tell us about what he's got planned for the future, because there is more coming already.
And in the wake of the historic Supreme Court decision striking down Section 3 of DOMA and rejecting the appeal of the overturn of Prop 8 on standing grounds, we're going to look at the same-sex marriages that resumed in California within days after the legal challenges failed, somewhat to everyone's surprise.
Yes, contrary to what we said last week. And also lickety-split, spouses of foreign-born partners are already obtaining green cards for them.
And we're going to sort out the portability of federal rights for married same-sex couples in this country.
Lawsuits are springing up in many states already, challenging the constitutionality of the state constitutional amendments banning same-sex marriage.
And the bans that are not in the Constitution as well. Activists are gearing up for ballot initiatives to overturn some of the state constitutional bans in 2014.
We'll get them one way or another.
And
Edie Windsor is getting the estate taxes she paid back with interest, federal and state.
Now, in some other news related to this, same-sex marriages commenced in our first state.
An extra star for everyone who knows what state that is. ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, is going to come up for a U.S. Senate committee vote next week.
There's been turmoil in the leadership of OutServe, Service Members Legal Defense Network.
Boy, that's a mess. But good news in Colorado, where a 6-year-old transgender child has won an important case there before their Civil Rights Division.
There were big pride marches all around the world, including here in New York and including Istanbul. But in St. Petersburg, they arrested 60 marchers.
Every last one of them who showed up, and a few of the protesters. The American Medical Association has come out against the ban on gay male blood donations.
And 2 more men with HIV may, emphasize on may, have been cured of it using an elaborate stem cell transplant procedure.
Don't go rushing off yet, but it's always a good news story, just not dispositive, as the lawyers would say. Alec Baldwin goes on an anti-gay rant on Twitter and is immediately forgiven by GLAAD. And
unlike Paula Deen.
More news from her, too. And Cher news.
Oh, yeah.
You may have heard the thing about her talking about Tom Cruise, but everyone's left out the real news, which we'll get towards the end of this show.
Stay tuned. So,
All
yes.
right. Well, last week we told you, as we discussed the wins at the Supreme Court on getting rid of the Defense of Marriage Act Section 3 and having marriages able to be resumed in California with the technical decision on the Prop 8 case refusing standing for the proponents of Prop 8, that it would take about a month because there was a 25-day period during which those proponents of Prop 8 had time to petition for a rehearing of the case. And then there were a few technical things that the Ninth Circuit had to do and the district court had to do.
But the Ninth Circuit just went ahead and lifted that stay within days.
The California Attorney General asked the Ninth Circuit to move fast, and lo and behold, they did. It turns out that, of course, it's perfectly legal for them to lift the stay. The 25-day period for the petition for rehearing stays in effect. The right-wingers can still go to the Supreme Court and say, we want you to rehear this case.
But Anthony Kennedy said no.
He did,
and then now they're trying with somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, they can still go back all they want, but and usually you would wait to lift the stay because you don't want to have the same thing happen as happened before, which is that they're legal and then they're not legal again. But the Ninth Circuit said, oh, the hell with it.
Because they've never undone any marriages anyway.
So the Ninth Circuit said to the district court, we are lifting the stay we placed on your order for same-sex marriages to resume and Prop 8 to be invalidated. And boom, everybody went and got married.
Right.
Thousands and thousands of people. And I have to think that some of this is because of the experience in 2008. I think a lot of people didn't take seriously the idea that Prop 8 could pass and weren't in a hurry to get married. I mean, 18,000 couples got married in 2008.
Well, in 5 years, you could build up a lot of people who want to get married.
Demand. But I would guess that some of that propulsion is about, we're not waiting another second. So first, the two couples in the Prop 8 case, the female and male couples, got married in San Francisco and LA, and now there is a flood of people getting married in California.
Yep.
Including, we just heard, Doctor Who.
John Barrowman, who was in Torchwood and Doctor Who. Yes, he married his longtime partner in California.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And then we looked at what the Obama administration was doing to implement these decisions. You know, I think when we hear these decisions, we think, okay, we got these great decisions, and now, you know, things will proceed. Well, boom again.
Janet Napolitano said you're going to, and for purposes of immigration and binational couples, you're going to treat them the same as sex discordant couples, heterosexual couples.
And that's the law now, so why wait? And here's the first green card for a non-U.S. national who is married to a U.S. citizen.
And the big thing is that they got married, I believe, in New York.
Yep.
And they live in Florida, so which does not recognize their marriage, but the federal government, for this purpose, does.
And that's the next step. The federal government now must sort out what federal benefits are going to be portable around the country if you are legally married in one of the states or the District of Columbia or another country that legally recognizes same-sex marriages, and you move to a jurisdiction that doesn't. What federal benefits will follow you? And some automatically do, like the green card thing.
If you're a member of the Defense Department, military follows you.
But now we're going to have to sort out Social Security and everything like that. But I have to say, you know, we hear a lot of talk, and we hear it today on the healthcare story, about disappointment in Obama. But
on the healthcare story, the fact that they're delaying, forcing companies to provide this insurance is a real setback.
But if George Bush were in office, or Mitt Romney, their administrations would not be moving at this pace to implement these rulings.
Although he did all he could, but Mitt Romney could not stop same-sex marriage when he was governor of Massachusetts, much to the consternation of the right wing.
Well, he pulled out this law from, what, 1402, and not quite, to try to prevent out-of-state couples from getting married.
I think it's after the whites got here.
And
it did have to do with race.
Yeah. But they would be trying to stand in the schoolhouse door.
Yep.
Or in this case, the courthouse door.
Absolutely.
So we are thrilled that the Obama administration is moving ahead as fast as possible.
What's the website we have people can go to if they want to read about this?
There is a fact sheet that has been put out by the LGBT legal organizations that is, frequently asked questions about all of these issues around marriage. If you go to lambdalegal.org, you can access the marriage fact sheet and start getting your questions answered and learn where to ask more questions if you have them, because these questions, what's the matter? People haven't been watching our show. They're not up to date on these issues. I don't get it.
And, you know, even we in our headline last week said DOMA is dead, but of course Section 2 of DOMA is not dead, and states still don't have to recognize legal same-sex marriages from other states, though that may change soon. So let's go to can we start doing the state updates and what's going on around the country?
Well, you mentioned Section 2, so I have to say that, you know, in Congress, the Respect for Marriage Act has been reintroduced to repeal all of DOMA precisely because of this. But the deal is that even if they repeal Section 2 of DOMA, it doesn't mean that every state has to recognize same-sex marriages performed in other states. All they have to decide is that same-sex marriages offend their public policy,
right,
and they don't have to recognize
because
them.
New York recognized legal same-sex marriages from elsewhere because it did not offend our public policy,
Exactly.
even though we hadn't enacted them.
Exactly.
That's how Edie Windsor got married in Canada and was recognized here, and now is getting all that tax money back. It's turning out to be 600, and well, she's going to get back the $363,000 in federal taxes, which was the money plus interest, and she gets back $275,000 plus interest from New York State. It took me by surprise that we hadn't worked that out in New York, where her marriage was recognized, but there it is. No cut from the lawyers from Paul Weiss Rifkin, which took the case pro bono.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or the ACLU, also operating pro bono.
I do have to say, when all this was being debated on the talk shows this weekend, George Stephanopoulos was hosting, of course, this week, and he has Brian Brown on from the National Organization for Marriage, who said, when your boss, President Clinton, signed DOMA, the court is now saying that you were animated by animus, you know, by hatred. And of course, George just changed the subject.
Yeah.
And then George Stephanopoulos said, well, if I had a vote on DOMA, I'd probably vote against it. I'd probably vote against it. He wrote the talking points for Clinton on that.
Wow. I do, sorry for being a dog with a bone, but I have to go back to this Section 2 thing. What Section 2 did do, evidently, while it didn't impose any more, you know, it didn't change what the states already have about being able to reject marriages that offend public policy from other states. It did tend to amend the whole system of comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, where states are required at some level to respect the judicial decisions of other states. And Section 2 of DOMA undermined that. And
there are almost no marriages that you can think of, very few heterosexual marriages that won't be recognized in another state.
But that doesn't mean the state can't decide that a same-sex marriage from another state does offend their public policy.
Is repugnant.
Well, then we'll go through more, litigation or legislation or whatever. It's why it's so important that we do legalize same-sex marriage in every state.
Yes.
To get around issues like that. And while we'd love to do it in each state individually if we have to, it's really much more likely to come from a Supreme Court decision down the road. I've heard from a lot of people in the last week who are disappointed in the Supreme Court at not declaring same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states. Well, I think that's naive of them.
Some of the liberals were among those who slowed it down, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
The dissenters in the Prop 8 case wanted to decide about that, and it was Sotomayor and Kennedy and two right-wingers on the Supreme Court. So who knows where that decision would have come out, but that's why they dissented. So David Boyce and Ted Olson and AFER, the American Foundation for Equal Rights, which was Chad Griffin who brought the Prop 8 case in the first place, they came out after all this and said, don't think we're stopping now. We are working hard to decide where we are going to bring more court cases because we are not stopping until it is legal everywhere. And we understand that it has to be legal everywhere and it's going to require a Supreme Court decision. So to those who are disappointed, yes, there are people who say the Supreme Court just punted on this and chickened out, and we shouldn't be celebrating this as a huge win.
Just as with the sodomy case, they waited until we were down to 14 states that had anti-sodomy laws, and with interracial marriage, we were down to really a handful of states before they declared.
I certainly think we will get at least a few more states, and we'll start talking about them individually. But it is going to require probably a Supreme Court decision.
And now that the court says it's okay, 58% of Americans say that they support same-sex marriage. The poll numbers are going up.
55.
The poll numbers are going up.
Well, it kind of reflects the DOMA decision on the court.
Oh, yeah, I was always for that.
Decision.
Yeah, of course. Why not?
Okay.
Well, so let's go down. Well, news from Michigan this week, where the federal judge there in the case ordered a trial on the state ban on gay couples marrying or adopting kids. And it relies on the Windsor decision.
Yeah, and meanwhile, representatives in Michigan have introduced a package of bills in the legislature to legalize marriage that way.
Where's that
Unlikely?
going?
Well, hey, sure.
You got to get it in there.
Absolutely.
You got to get it in there, and then you got to realize when you vote for people, it makes a difference. 2014, everybody's got to vote. In 2014, in New Jersey, that's the last state in the Northeast, besides Pennsylvania, to resist same-sex marriage. The poll there shows 64% support, but Governor Chris Christie vetoed the same-sex marriage bill, and they're looking to either override him or Lambda is proceeding, trying to get their summary. They're asking for summary judgment on their case.
Yes.
In that.
Yeah, they filed a writ of. Oh no, that's New Mexico.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, let's go to New Mexico then.
Well, I just want to quote Chris Christie because he's being asked now. He's being confronted about this.
I want a referendum. Let the people decide. You say 64%. Let's find out.
Well, they asked him what he thought of the DOMA decision and the Prop 8 decision, and he said, "It's those activist judges again." Shameless.
Unlike
He's
the activist
shameless.
legislators.
Oh, and the Kennedy decision on DOMA insulted everybody by calling it animus that prompted DOMA. Well, so, guess what, Chris? It was animus.
Now, New Mexico is one of these states without a anti-same-sex marriage amendment, and a lawsuit there was filed July the 3rd seeking a ruling from the Supreme Court directly asking for federal,
Well, they're asking for guidance.
Right.
They filed a writ of mandamus, and because some clerks say, look, there's no law in this state that forbids same-sex marriage. We want to issue them. So, and then the governor, I think, stopped it, or the attorney general said, no, there's really no way you can justify that. So the legal groups have gone to the court and they've said, give us your opinion immediately. Are same-sex marriages allowed here, or aren't they?
In Illinois and Hawaii, again, there's a double front fight on the courts and in the legislature to turn it around there.
And Hawaii Senator Brian Schatz and he's the U.S. Senator, but he has he's putting together a petition to the Hawaii legislature to have them pass a marriage law.
And in Illinois, if this isn't done by October 22nd, they're having a march on Springfield for marriage equality, which is the first day of the fall session of the legislature.
Yep.
You will remember in May, they didn't vote on same-sex marriage.
And if you want details about that October 22nd march, should it be taking place, there's a Facebook page for that. I'm sure you can find it.
Okay.
And as a protest, when the Supreme Court was about to issue its rulings last week, 25 Ohio couples went to the Supreme Court in D.C. and staged a little marriage ceremony there to, not because it's legal.
Oregon is looking for a referendum in 2014. They've got a constitutional amendment to undo. And in Arizona, they're getting signatures for 2014 for such an amendment. And again, the trend in these is not just to repeal the amendment, but to have same-sex marriage. I'm not sure that's what they've decided here. But there it is.
But here was the best thing of the week. A representative, the first out gay representative in Pennsylvania, Brian Sims, is introducing a marriage bill there. Some activists are mad at him that they say, hey, we have no non-discrimination laws in this state.
I know, statewide. But marriage is in the news.
But he gets and he wants to speak on the floor of the legislature about the DOMA decision, just to say, isn't America great and blah, blah, blah. And this right-wing representative stops him by objecting, because you have to have unanimous consent to speak. So he sticks up his hand and stops it. And when he's asked about it, he says, "I couldn't let him speak. That was open rebellion against God," on the floor of the Pennsylvania legislature.
No.
There is no free speech in this room.
No, there's a Taliban. Colorado.
Yes.
You know, they just began civil unions there,
Yep.
which is pretty good. But they're saying we don't expect marriage until the end of the decade, but maybe sooner.
Hey, I didn't expect marriages in California until next month, and look what's happening there. Equality Florida, the statewide LGBT group there, wants to start a lawsuit for marriage in Florida, so they are seeking plaintiffs for this case. They want people who will go to a marriage bureau, ask for a license, be rejected, and become the plaintiffs in a lawsuit in the state, just as is happening in other states, to sue the state and say, look, you have an equal protection law here in your Constitution. You have to give us equal rights. If you are interested in being a plaintiff in a Florida lawsuit for marriage, you can go to their Equality Florida website, which is eqfl.org, and apply to be a plaintiff in the lawsuit.
And we've been telling you there was no real update from Nevada, but the legislature has acted and done it this session to repeal the constitutional amendment and have same-sex marriage, and they have to do it again in the next legislature, and then it goes on the ballot in 2016.
Did we talk about the Nevada and Hawaii cases now moving forward, that they were stayed in the Ninth Circuit pending the Supreme Court decisions? And those could easily turn into the Supreme Court decisions that would legalize marriage nationally.
Now, Indiana, which has not done an anti-gay constitutional amendment on marriage, now they're looking at it very seriously. Social conservatives want one in 2014.
Social conservatives are introducing proposals like that in the U.S. Congress. They want to.
Well,
they're not going to get anywhere with it. I'm just saying.
They aren't taking this line down.
Well, they're fulfilling what they've said before, that if DOMA falls, they have no retaining wall against us, and so they want now to try to push a U.S. constitutional amendment.
And just a reminder again, and we talked a lot about this with people in the Pride Parade, and when I talked to people about how you think things are going, they said, you know, it was obviously a terrific decision on marriage, but we're very upset what the court did on voting rights, anti-discrimination, what they're likely to do on affirmative action. So there's a lot of work for us to do with our allies in all those movements to turn that around.
By the way, couples are not just flooding the California Marriage Bureau to get married. Even in places where it's legal, like New York, there is a new flood of couples going in and getting marriage licenses now that they will get federal rights along with their state.
Absolutely.
Including Ted Allen, my old pal from the Gay Journalists Group, who was on Queer Eye and is now on the Food Network. Congratulations to him for his impending marriage.
And let's look at the cover of the New Yorker this week. We've got a picture of it there that we can show, if you can get to that. Well, anyway, there they are, Bert and Ernie, and happy couple looking on at the picture of the Supreme Court. This has set some people on edge.
Well, there's a long dispute about whether Bert and Ernie are an actual romantic couple. The Sesame Street Workshop says they have no sexuality, they are pre-sexual, sometimes they say they're puppets. But it was still heartwarming to see there. Yeah, let me just run down things here. Marriage, of course, becomes legal in Minnesota and Rhode Island on August 1st, but became legal in Delaware on July 1st. So those couples who married legally in Delaware on July 1st were able to immediately access federal rights.
Well, some already had civil unions and they were converted.
Yes, including the state senator, the woman who came out during the marriage debate on the floor of the state Senate. She and her partner, who've been together for a long time, were the first to be married, but the first couple married who hadn't taken advantage of the civil union, who were more pristine, were a couple of men and State Attorney General Beau Biden,
son of the Vice President of the United States,
showed up to speak a little before their ceremony, and then they were married by a judge, and we have a little report on that.
Today we are witnesses to an historic event for Delaware and our community, and quite frankly our country. But more importantly, we are participants in a very personal event, a love story, the marriage of Joe and Dan, a celebration of hope, faith, and commitment.
And may you never, ever forget the significance and the importance of this very special day in your lives, this historic day in the first state. By the power and the authority vested in me by the state of Delaware, I now pronounce you lawfully wed, married in accordance with the laws of the state of Delaware. Congratulations, you're married, Dan. Joe?
This was one of the most exciting moments of my life. I am so...
And that's all we have.
Well,
they're very excited.
Congratulations to them. I want to run down a few other details. New York State, 7% of the marriages performed in the state outside New York City in the 2 years same-sex marriages been legal have been same-sex marriages. 7% in the rest of the state. We don't have New York City statistics. Obama was in Senegal and was asked about all of this. He said, you know, you should get federal benefits no matter where you live. We love this decision.
President of Senegal didn't like that and scored some political points on him on that. And he said, we're never gonna have that. And he was getting a lot of approbation at home. And then he said, what about death penalty in your country?
Right. That was a good point. But he said, we're not ready to decriminalize homosexuality.
Never will be.
We would arrest you if you said anything like that.
It ain't funny, McGee.
But we respect everyone.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well.
I'm just fascinated by all that.
Okay.
The Supreme Court, after it issued its big decisions, disposed of a few other cases, including one from Arizona. Arizona had passed a law taking away benefits from same-sex partners of state employees on the grounds that they couldn't afford it. And then a court ordered them to reinstate them, and Governor Jan Brewer, maniac, appealed to the Supreme Court and said, no, we can't afford these benefits. We're allowed to take them away. And the Supreme Court said, forget it. You're wrong, and we're rejecting your appeal. That was very nice.
Yep.
Tucson City Council has passed a law legalizing civil unions and domestic partnerships in Tucson, Arizona. Yes. A federal judge in Michigan, aside from all this marriage stuff, enjoined a law that had barred domestic partner benefits for state employees there. They're all going off this equal protection reading from the Supreme Court on DOMA. It is just flying around the country, of course, because it makes perfect sense. Wait a second. In Nebraska, a senator there is going to hold a hearing in the fall on recognizing out-of-state legal same-sex marriages, which would be lovely. The dam continues to have holes. A study has found that over 600 million people live in places worldwide that allow same-sex marriage. That's pretty good. That's from our friend Tony Pittman in Melbourne, Australia. And we told you about the green card in Florida. The Office of Personnel Management in the federal government is extending benefits to all federal employees with same-sex partners, no matter where they live. That will be...
including domestic partners and civil union people and things like that.
I don't know, but it
because
includes,
they could now.
Yeah, insurance, family benefits, retirees will get these benefits.
Well, let's see about that. We have to clarify that. Don't go out and...
Well, I know it's going to apply to marrieds. I don't know about domestic partners. And, Senator Boxer says that the Social Security Administration issued emergency instructions.
She's asking for this.
Yeah, No, she says they issued emergency instructions to take applications from all gay married couples pending administrative or legislative change, which is good. And the Family Research Council has declared August the first ex-gay Pride Month. The National LGBT Bar Association is putting together something called the Tax Equity Project.
What is that?
It's all about making sure you're paying the right taxes.
You might get some back taxes here, folks.
You might. You can go to the LGBTbar.org website to find out about that.
And some of you will be paying more.
Macklemore and Ryan Lewis's song Same Love, which I think we showed a little of last year when it came out, shooting up the charts. It's really good, actually. If you go to YouTube, look up Same Love. And the best reaction to the Prop 8 decision, Paula Deen says that because the right wing didn't have standing to sue, according to the Supreme Court, because they were not personally injured.
This white woman doesn't have a right to sue me.
Yes! We'll see how far she gets with that.
Well.
All right. Other news?
She should go to GLAAD and be forgiven.
Yeah.
All right. Other news. Well, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, lest we forget, we don't have a basic anti-discrimination law in this country.
So true.
And this is very basic. And Nancy...
So many people don't know that.
Some people now talking about rebranding it into the Freedom to Work Act. That ain't going to happen. But there is supposed to be a vote July 10th in committee in the Senate.
Yes.
We're not expecting to get this through the House, although actually Nancy Pelosi at Netroots said that she's skeptical that the votes are there in the House. She would entertain the idea of discharge if the said that, you know, and then she...
That's where you force it out of committee and onto the floor, but she says we don't have the votes to
and she
pass
says
it in
bathrooms are the sticking point, the whole transgender thing.
Oh, please.
Which is, well, that's what, and she said the solution is unisex bathroom signs, which I'm for.
Sure, absolutely. In stories of transgender and transsexual people in the news, there was a big headline last week out of Colorado where this 6-year-old Coy Mathis, who is...
Boy to girl.
Yes, exactly. Self-declared girl, has been given permission to use the girls' bathroom at her school by the Colorado Civil Rights Division.
She was labeled male at birth, expressed as a girl from 18 months, wore girls' clothes to school, referred to as she by everybody in the school.
Yep.
But the district said you got to use the boys' room or the staff room, and TILDEF won the case.
There's a new study out of Europe that says hormone therapy, appropriately conducted, obviously, for transsexuals is safe. That for those who think, you know, this is a bad deal to be taking all these hormones, wrong. It's absolutely fine according to the European study.
Now, GENDA, the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act in New York, died, didn't even get a vote. That's, you know, we've explained here many times, but, you know, this is the #1 issue for the Pride agenda. They take in millions of dollars, and they don't explain to people the real politics behind this and why it happened.
Yeah.
All I got from them was an invitation to another Hamptons fundraiser.
Yeah.
How about being out in the streets about it?
I want to go back to ENDA for a minute. Senator Tim Johnson, Democrat of South Dakota, has become the 53rd senator to co-sponsor ENDA. That leaves just 2 or 3 Democrats who don't, a couple of Republicans who do.
And U.S. Representative Louis Gohmert, for a Republican of Texas, was asked about workplace protections for us and said, "Who wants to talk about sexual orientation when they're at work? Good grief!" he said.
Oh, he's such a clown. But more seriously, one thing we've been asking for is for President Obama to sign an executive order that would outlaw discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity and expression by companies that are federal contractors.
Which would cover like 25% of employment in the United States. Do you need some more water?
No, I got some.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Including idiots like ExxonMobil.
It would. But Barney Frank is trying to give the president some cover on this.
Barney had been for this, but now he's come out against it. Excuse me. He says that if Obama signed an executive order like this, Congress would be very angry because this would be seen as treading on their territory.
What do you care, Barney? You're not there anymore.
Well, not only is he not there, but they unveiled his official portrait at whatever committee it was he headed, banking or whatever. And in his official portrait, there is a rainbow flag behind him, along with the U.S. flag. He's wearing his wedding ring. Was there anything else there? No, that's about it.
Okay.
But it's very gay.
Well, let's talk about, while we were away covering all the Supreme Court stuff, what happened at OutServe Service Members Legal Defense Network.
Ooh.
After 9 months, they booted their executive director, or they're transitioning their transgender executive director, Allison Robinson. Some board members have resigned over the dismissal. Several senior staff have resigned in protest. Some are coming back. The
14 chapters of the organization have announced their anger at the dismissal of Allison Robinson.
So what is going on?
And well, there is they're still in negotiations. So they have come back to the table to talk to each other. So this is still an evolving event. But the first charge was that the board, or some members of the board, specifically the board president, Josh Seafried, were not happy about the emphasis on transgender or transsexual members of the military or veterans.
The ones who aren't covered.
Yes, exactly. And so they wanted, and that they didn't have a ton of money.
Veterans are covered. I mean,
well, some, yes, now, some, in some ways. But there was no allowance for open service by transgender or transsexual people in the military. And since the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, of course, their funding is down because people perceive it as an issue that's been taken care of, which, of course, it hasn't been in many ways. They're still working out the benefits. They're still working out the transgender and transsexual issues.
Still got to train everybody.
So they are in the midst of turmoil and a lot of
Though
debate.
it is nice to see at Kirkland Air Force Base, they have a gay-straight alliance openly, and they're doing it openly, and it's the first of its kind in the Air Force. And kudos to Staff Sergeant Justin Lal, who is one of the leaders of this thing.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, the new acting Secretary of the Air Force, after the current secretary left, is the out-gay new Undersecretary, Eric Fanning. He is now running the Air Force.
Highest-ranking Department of Defense official.
Yeah.
Can we talk about some crime stories, maybe?
Yes.
Well, in D.C., a 29-year-old trans woman was stabbed 40 times in Southeast Washington, somehow survived this. And Bree Wallace is the name, says the assailant didn't say anything. Police called it an assault with intent to kill, neither random nor a hate crime.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to have known each other casually. Wallace had declined the man's request to become romantically involved.
And there have been stories of more attacks in New York. There was one on the F train. There have been others, and there were a couple of shootings around the San Francisco Pride Parade.
2 vendors at the Pride Festival were shot in the leg.
Again, for violence issues, you really should report them. You can find out more about suspects who are being sought at the avp.org website.
And in Santa Ana, lesbian fugitive Jessica Gonzalez, wanted for shooting her girlfriend of 13 years, Jennifer Solorio, died last week by committing suicide by cop, by pulling a toy gun out on some police officers who weren't after her, and she had a lengthy rap sheet for drug and theft charges, and now she's dead.
Footnote on back to the military stuff. The New York Times says that the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell has made it easier and safer for men in the military to report being sexually assaulted and raped.
Well, the new report says that of the 26,000 such assaults in 2012, 53% involved attacks on men, mostly by other. It says mostly by other men. I can't, men make up 85% of the forces, but women are disproportionately at risk.
Disproportionately at risk, but in hard numbers, more men are sexually assaulted than women in the military.
And, before the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, people worried about reporting this because they'd have to report male-male sexual contact even if it was unwanted.
Which would then lead to suspicions about them, although it is gay men in the military who are often assaulted.
Well, many of the assaults were part of hazing and bullying, they said.
And speaking of sexual assault, fascinating release of files from the Milwaukee Catholic Archdiocese about clergy sex abuse, and most interestingly, the fact about how this was covered up and how our New York Cardinal Dolan, who
The
was
president of the Conference of Catholic Bishops in the United States.
and a great favorite of the Vatican.
And Matt Lauer on to the Today Show.
Yes, who was in Milwaukee at the time, transferred tens of millions of dollars into the
Cemetery fund.
cemetery maintenance fund.
To protect it from lawsuits.
Yes.
Now, this was well known, but he just denied it, and now it's come out that he wrote an email or something to the Vatican saying, hey, I want to do this, and this is going to save us a lot of money. Why aren't people out there with pitchforks at St. Patrick's saying, out, out, out?
Exactly.
You know, where's your self-respect?
Couldn't agree more.
Anyway, Exodus International. A lot of news this week about this this gay change group folding after 38 years. Their president, Alan Chambers, who was on the Oprah network,
Apologizing
for the pain and hurt he's
for
caused.
years of undue judgment by the organization
couldn't
and
figure
the
this out.
Christian church as a whole.
But now self-hating gays can turn to the Restored Hope Network. The board of Exodus is looking to start a new group, and Chambers still feels, the guy who was running Exodus, who's quit, still feels homosexual activity is wrong.
But he accepts his feelings of same-sex attraction, which will never go away.
The Utah and the Salt Lake County Council unanimously called on U.S. Senator Orrin Hatch to support ENDA. Unanimously. That included all the Republicans who said, well, it is, it's our law. Why shouldn't it be the country's?
Well, that's a nice thought. Congressman Jerry Nadler and Congressman Conyers have a bill that would add non-discrimination protections to the Fair Housing Act. That would be based on the HUD study that we talked about a couple of weeks ago that found there was discrimination in housing. Surprise.
Remember Ralph Reed, who ran the Christian Coalition? He runs the Faith and Freedom Conference now. Attendance was down to 400. They used to get thousands.
Don't count Ralph Reed
Marco Rubio and Rand Paul spoke. Donald Trump spoke at this thing, as did Herman Cain and Rick Perry.
I just want to see them shrink smaller and smaller. The U.S. Department of Education will add bullying of LGBT people to the civil rights data collection system. This is really important. And it's all because GLSEN, the Gay Lesbian and Straight Education Network, took a group of students to meet with Arne Duncan, the Secretary of Education, and one of them said to him, so, are you collecting students' data on students being bullied and harassed? And he said, oh, what a good idea.
My God, yeah. We've tried this for years in New York as well.
Yeah. Ed Markey won the Senate race in Massachusetts,
Keeping it in Democratic hands.
And opening up his congressional seat. And as expected, Carl Sciarrantino, out gay state rep, will run for the House seat of Ed Markey and is given a good chance and is very popular.
In the New York City mayor's race, candidate Anthony Weiner, you remember him from the sexting scandal, asked a woman to sign his petition to get on the ballot, and she said, I won't vote for that dyke, referring to Chris Quinn.
Yeah.
Weiner didn't take her on until he saw a reporter heard it, and then he said, oh, lady, it's not your fault. After being attacked by gay Quinn supporters, he apologized.
Well, and then he went to the rally in Sheridan Square after the Supreme Court decisions, wearing red pants and a rainbow tie and a white shirt. And people, wait, there's more to this. Yes, people asked him about it. He said, this is the gay-straight divide. Straights think I look silly. Gays think it's amazing. And then he turned to a staff member, I think a gay staff member, and said, don't I look amazing? And the staffer said, well, your pants could be a little tighter.
Don't get me started.
Okay.
Some pride notes. In Calistoga, California, they removed the rainbow flag a couple of days after putting it up due to complaints. The mayor said it's an open city, but the flag wasn't vetted through a normal approval process, and now they're developing what they call a statement flag policy.
San Francisco Pride was expected to be interesting. It was. 2,000 people marched in support of Bradley Manning and shut down the local military recruitment booth for a while.
And the Pride Committee rejected the offer of mediation on that whole issue by the City Human Rights Commission. They rejected it. Now,
Well,
I said I was going to march with the Bradley Manning contingent, and I did have my sticker on, but it took like 3 hours for them to get off the street, and I had to move on. But I was with you in spirit.
Yeah, me too. And I went home before they appeared too. But that's the New York Pride Committee putting them so late in the parade that they discouraged us. Meanwhile, I'm happy to see the Bradley Manning contingent in San Francisco outnumbered Mark Zuckerberg and the 700 Facebook employees who marched. But the biggest corporate group at San Francisco Pride was Google. Bigger than the 700 from Facebook.
I mean, the Anti-Violence Project here looked like a Citibank contingent. They had big Citibank logos on their T-shirts. I'm a little wary of all this corporate sponsorship stuff.
And at the Sheridan Square rally after the Supreme Court decisions, Edie Windsor sort of spontaneously endorsed Chris Quinn.
Yes, it's true.
Yep. The Department of Health and Human Services has clarified nursing home gay patients have a right to have their partners visit. Evidently, that was a problem. The legislature in New Jersey has outlawed conversion therapy for minors. Now we'll see whether the governor signs that bill.
The bill in New York went nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know about Chris Christie signing this bill. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, but I don't want to prejudge. Anything is possible. The headquarters of the Boy Scouts of America said Scouts may not be in pride parades or flag ceremonies in uniform, though many of them do events for like St. Patrick's Day and stuff. So even though they say you can now be gay as a Scout, evidently you can't be too gay.
Okay.
And international news?
Sure.
Oh my God, we have so much left to do.
Well, in Brazil, the bill to allow psychiatrists to treat homosexuality as a disease was withdrawn by the sponsor when it became clear he was going to lose. One sponsor who was in the legislature is an anti-gay pastor who heads, wait for it, the Human Rights and Minorities Committee in the chamber. So gays met with Dilma Rousseff, who's the president of the country, and said, we got to get rid of this guy from that post.
Russian news. The Russian parliament signed the no promo homo law in front of children, which actually means you can't be anywhere doing anything. Putin signed it because he wants to get reelected and he thinks this will help him.
And they're looking to ban adoptions by same-sex couples from abroad and those living in countries where same-sex marriage is legal.
Yes, even if you live in the country, you can't do it. And there was a gay activist in Tatarstan, Kazan, Tatarstan, who wanted to do a rally or march, and he got turned down, and so he decided to just stand by himself outside.
So his father brought the police to him, and his mother snatched the sign from him, and he was beaten by the police, and now Dmitry Isakov, 24, is missing.
Yeah, we've heard that story before. And then in St. Petersburg, 60 gay activists were given a permit to hold a rally, a pride rally. So they go out to this field or whatever, and they start holding this rally.
It was an ambush.
Exactly.
They arrested 60 of them.
Yeah, all of them. 200 protesters showed up and started throwing rocks and eggs at them. The cops and military showed up and arrested them all, and about 8 of the protesters who were extremely violent. But my favorite moment was seeing the Russian military with a sign on their back that was some indication of their
Office of Military something.
Yeah,
who knows?
OMOH. And I thought, if those guys stand with their back to a mirror, it's going to say homo.
Human Rights Watch is pressing the International Olympic Committee to stop Russia from completely adopting all this anti-gay legislation, and they want guaranteed freedom of expression for gay athletes.
Yeah, good luck.
I'm getting nervous about people going there.
Amnesty International has come out with a report on Africa talking about discrimination, violence, and progress. So go to their website if you want to see that.
Despite all the turmoil in Turkey, activists in Istanbul got 20,000 people to march for LGBT Pride on June 30th, and it attracted a lot of the people who were protesting the government in general, who were willing to make common cause with us.
But the Pride parade was canceled in Sofia, Bulgaria, because of a fear of attacks.
And in Macedonia, anti-LGBT hate violence at the monument and demolition of the LGBT center at the Old Bazaar while they were showing a trans rights film.
First official legal lesbian wedding in Martinique in the Caribbean, because they are a French department and France has legalized same-sex marriage.
Prime Minister of Australia, new Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, supports same-sex marriage, but he wants a referendum on it?
Yeah. Well, it's still more than has been done before. And Obama has nominated several gay men as ambassadors. John Barry, former Office of Personnel Management, ambassador to Australia. Wally Brewster Jr. is ambassador to the Dominican Republic, but the Catholic Church is upset about that, and the cardinal there called him a maricon, which is Spanish for faggot.
Yep. And
nice talk.
I will say Adriano Espaillat, who's a state senator here, very big in the Dominican community, immediately condemned that, and the government's not doing that.
Yep.
This is the church.
Yes.
The peace and love place.
Okay, and the first Pride event was held at the Cape Verde Islands. But let's move on to AIDS news. The International AIDS Conference is being held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And in fact, our associate producer, Bill Ballman, is there. And we'll bring back more news. But you'll be hearing various stories come out of there, including one from Boston about 2 HIV-positive men who may have eradicated the virus through bone marrow transplants. It's still very early.
They both had lymphoma, which is the reason you get a bone marrow transplant, because it's very risky. And we'll see how they do. Right now, it looks like they've eradicated it, but you won't know for a while.
It's only been a few weeks.
Right.
The other big news out of the AIDS conference is that the World Health Organization has put out new guidelines saying people should go on treatment earlier.
When your CD4 count falls below 500 cells per cubic milliliter of
So
blood.
people are generally happy that they've done this, but some say it should be even broader, it should be everybody, and others say, there's really no evidence that going on at 500 is necessary for everybody, and taking these pills over decades is not fully studied yet, so maybe we should be a little more cautious.
Well, it does mean that 26 million people in poor and middle-income countries will be eligible for the drugs,
but
up from 17 million.
But the World Health Organization guidelines are cautious because they can't afford to give treatment for everybody worldwide, so they're still limiting it with some guidelines.
The American Medical Association has come out against the blanket ban on gay men giving blood. They say 1 in 2 million donations results in an HIV infection. In the UK and Australia have taken blood from gay men who have not had sex for a year. The FDA notes that gay men account for 61% of new HIV infections in the United States, but the Red Cross, America's Blood Centers, and the American Association of Blood Banks also advocate this change. HHS, the Health and Human Services, is still evaluating.
Oh, I've been evaluating for years. The Red Cross came out against this. That didn't move them. New York State Legislature has passed a bill that allowing pharmacists to give meningitis vaccinations. This is Senator Brad Hoylman's bill.
And they also passed a bill to require hospitals and clinics to offer hepatitis C screening to people born from, wait for it, 1945 to 1965, the ages with the highest infection rate. 75% of the cases, and they estimate that 3.2 million people are infected in this country with this. You can get the disease from an infection decades ago. It's transmitted by blood contact, from bad transfusions or shared needles. Hepatitis C now kills more Americans than HIV.
We have only a few minutes, but there's a chance we're actually going to get through all this news. Entertainment news. Patricia Nell Warren has regained the movie rights to The Front Runner, which Paul Newman bought in 1975.
I was going to say, the book was written in 74.
If you want to make the movie, you talk to Patricia Nell Warren again.
So Alec Baldwin was upset that a reporter said that his wife was doing lighthearted tweeting
Yeah.
during James Gandolfini's funeral. And so Alec Baldwin denied that she was doing this. And then she said, and I'm going to quote this. This is what he tweeted. "I'm going to find you, reporter George Stark, you toxic little queen, and I'm going to F you up." Also called him a lying little bitch. "And I'd put my foot up your effing ass, George Stark, but I'm sure you would dig it too much." So I wrote to GLAAD and I said, "You going to do something about this?" And they said, "Oh, what are you, the word police?" That's what they wrote to me.
No,
Why don't you-
you're the word
Why don't you-
police.
They said, "Why don't you look at what we're really doing?" I said to the spokesperson, "Maybe you didn't read the story." "Oh, we'll have something for you on this." And what did we get back? "It's laughable to think Alec Baldwin is anti-gay. He's wonderful on our issues." That's what I got from GLAAD. Why don't you just close up shop?
Wow. We didn't ask you to execute him.
No.
We just wanted you
Treat
to
him like
comment.
Paula Deen.
God. Congratulations to Paris Barkley, the out gay African-American movie and TV director he's a big deal in Hollywood, and he has just been elected, believe it or not, the first out gay president of the Directors Guild of America.
Oh, yeah,
he's
great.
directed episodes of West Wing and The Shield.
And he's
In
been out
Treatment,
forever.
Ever, and done great stuff.
Oh, Ronnie Eldridge is going to have Ann Northrup and Andy Hum on our show next week, Eldridge and Company, if you're in New York and you watch CUNY TV, or you can go online at CUNY.tv and see it on YouTube as well.
Andy Cohen, Watch What Happens Live on Bravo, had Cher on, or as he said, Cher-mageddon. And the thing that made news was he asked her about having had an affair with Tom Cruise, and she said, "Oh yes, he was one of my 5 best lovers." But what wasn't...
How much was she paid for that? More than those...
He then asked her, "Have you ever had a lesbian lover?" And she paused a moment and said, "Who hasn't?"
I have too as well, of course. No, I have not.
Well, I thought that was great of Cher to tell the truth, unlike Whoopi Goldberg, who has now buried her lesbian past.
She won't
On The
admit to
View
it anymore?
recently, someone said something about,
She used to talk about it.
Yes, not on The View, but elsewhere. And someone said something about women being attracted to women, and like everybody feels that. And she says, "Not everybody." And
did they ever find the 200-pound statue of the pink dog in
don't
Santa
think so.
Monica? Oh, was it?
And there's a big dust-up because Black Entertainment TV did their big annual award show, and they did a red carpet thing before the show, and the entertainer B. Scott, who is transgender or dresses sort of in high heels, makeup, whatever, was
Tone it down.
one of the hosts. Tone it
That's what they told
down,
him.
take off the heels, don't wear the makeup. It's a sad picture of him in not in heels, and Bravo has fashion queens. They have Derek J. and
Don't they
what's his
understand?
name?
Why did they ask him if they don't like him?
Exactly. I mean, that's how he's known.
You want me? Take me as myself.
All right. Well, we believe we've done 2 weeks worth of news in 5730. We'll be a little slower next week, but mostly next week we have James Essex of the ACLU LGBT Rights Project, who was one of Edie Windsor's main lawyers, and he will take us inside the reactions to the case and tell us what's happening in the future.
Bye-bye.
See you then.